Marcus Chun checked his weapon for the third time in 10 minutes. The plasma pistol felt heavy on his hip as he walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime. The space station was huge, spinning slowly in the darkness between stars. It was built to be neutral ground, where different alien species could meet without fighting. Today was important. Very important. Princess Zarathil of the Etherian Empire was here to sign a peace treaty. The Etherians were tall, blue-skinned beings with large eyes that seemed to glow with inner light. They could read emotions through touch, and sometimes even without it. The princess was young for her kind, only about 200 years old, but she was smart and wanted peace. Marcus had been her bodyguard for 6 months now. He was one of the few humans working in the Galactic Diplomatic Corps. Most aliens thought humans were too violent and unpredictable for diplomatic work. But Princess Zarathil had specifically asked for a human bodyguard after reading about human loyalty in her studies. "Marcus," she said softly as they entered the main conference room. Her voice had a musical quality that made human ears tingle. "Are you worried about today?" "Always worried when it comes to keeping you safe, Your Highness," Marcus replied with a small smile. He was a big man, broad-shouldered and strong, with kind eyes and scars on his hands from years of military service. "But that's my job." The conference room was enormous, with a round table in the center. Representatives from 12 different species sat around it. The air hummed with translation devices, working overtime to convert dozens of languages into something everyone could understand. The Vorthic delegation sat across from the Etherians. They were a warrior race with thick gray skin and multiple arms. Their leader, General Krekstar, kept glaring at the princess with his 4 red eyes. Marcus positioned himself behind and slightly to the right of Princess Zarathil's chair. From here, he could see the entire room and watch all the exits. His training had taught him to always expect trouble, even in diplomatic meetings. Especially in diplomatic meetings, thought the talks went well at first. Trade agreements were discussed. Border disputes were settled. The princess spoke eloquently about the benefits of cooperation between their species. Marcus noticed that even the Vorthic seemed to be listening, though their body language remained tense. Then everything went wrong. The lights flickered. Emergency alarms began to wail. The station's defensive shields, which should have been impenetrable, sparked and failed with a sound like breaking glass. Through the large windows, Marcus could see ships approaching fast. Vorthic ships, but not the official ones that had brought the delegation. "Assassins," General Krekstar snarled, but he seemed genuinely surprised. "This is not our doing." Marcus was already moving. His hand found Princess Zarathil's arm, ready to pull her to safety. But the attacks came too fast. The walls exploded inward as quantum disruptors tore through the station's hull. These weapons were banned by galactic law because they were too dangerous, too deadly. Purple energy beams cut through the air. One of them sliced through the conference table like it was made of paper. Another beam caught a crystalline delegate and simply erased him from existence. The smell of burning metal and ozone filled the room. "Get down," Marcus shouted, pushing the princess toward the floor. But there was nowhere to hide. The attackers had planned this perfectly. They knew exactly where everyone would be sitting. Marcus saw it coming before anyone else did. A massive quantum disruptor beam was charging up, aimed directly at Princess Zarathil. The weapon's energy signature was wrong, twisted somehow. This wasn't just meant to kill quickly. This was meant to cause maximum pain and suffering. Time seemed to slow down. Marcus could see the purple energy building, ready to fire. He could see the fear in the princess's large eyes as she realized what was happening. He could hear her heartbeat through the chaos, fast and scared. There was no time to think. No time to calculate odds or consider alternatives. Marcus simply moved. He threw himself forward, putting his entire body between the princess and the weapon. The quantum beam hit him square in the chest. Pain exploded through every nerve in his body as the exotic energy began tearing him apart at the molecular level. His skin started to glow and crack like broken glass, but Marcus didn't scream. Instead, he looked down at Princess Zarathil, who was staring up at him with shock and horror. Her telepathic abilities let her feel his emotions in these final moments, and what she sensed confused her completely. Marcus wasn't afraid. He wasn't angry. He was happy? Peaceful? There was a deep satisfaction in his mind, a sense that everything was exactly as it should be. He had done what he was supposed to do. He had kept her safe. "Remember us fondly," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the chaos. His body was dissolving, becoming light and energy, but he kept his eyes on the princess until the very end. The beam finished its work in seconds. Marcus Chen simply ceased to exist, scattered into atoms and emptiness. But Princess Zarathil was unharmed, protected by his sacrifice. The attack ended as quickly as it had begun. Security forces arrived and captured the surviving assassins. Medical teams rushed in to help the wounded. But for Princess Zarathil, sitting on the floor where Marcus had pushed her to safety, the universe had changed forever. She had felt his mind in those final moments. She had experienced his emotions as he died. And what she had felt made no sense according to everything her species understood about intelligent life. Marcus Chun had died with joy in his heart. Joy at giving his life for someone who wasn't even his own kind. As the princess stood up slowly, her legs shaking, she realized she had witnessed something that would change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. She just didn't know it yet. Dr. Velther had seen many strange things in her 50 years as a station medic, but she had never seen a princess cry. Princess Zarathil sat in the medical bay, tears running down her blue cheeks like liquid starlight. Her whole body shook, not from injury, but from shock. "I felt him die," the princess whispered to the Etherian doctor examining her. "I felt his mind in those last moments." "Velther, it doesn't make sense. No being should feel what I felt from him." Dr. Velther paused her medical scanner. As an Etherian herself, she understood what the princess meant. Their people were natural telepaths who could sense emotions and thoughts through physical contact. Sometimes, in moments of extreme trauma, they could sense minds even without touching. "What did you feel, Your Highness?" Velther asked quietly. "Peace, completion, and joy." Princess Zarathil looked up with confused eyes. "He was happy to die for me. Not resigned to it, not accepting it because he had no choice. He was genuinely happy. How is that possible?" Meanwhile, in the station's security center, Captain Thorak of the Nexus Prime Guard was having his own problems understanding what had happened. He was a Zentorian, a species known for their logical minds and excellent investigative skills. But the more he learned about the attack, the less sense it made. The three captured Vorthic assassins sat in separate holding cells, each being questioned by different species using various truth detection methods. The crystalline investigators used light-based analysis of brain patterns. The psychic collective employed mind-reading techniques. The results were the same from all three prisoners. And Captain Thorak didn't like what he was hearing. "They studied human psychology for months before this attack," reported Lieutenant Kess, a young Zentarian officer. "They specifically chose quantum disruptors because their research showed humans have the strongest self-preservation instincts in the galaxy." Captain Thorak's antenna twitched with confusion. "Explain." "Sir, they believed that when faced with certain death, the human bodyguard would abandon his post and save himself. Every psychological profile they studied indicated that humans are extremely survival-focused. They expected him to run." The captain stared at the report in his hands. The data was clear. According to galactic psychological databases, humans scored highest on self-preservation indexes. They were supposedly the most likely species to choose personal survival over abstract duty. Yet Marcus Chun had done exactly the opposite. "Run the database search again," Captain Thorak ordered. "Cross-reference human military records, behavioral studies, anything we have." 2 hours later, Lieutenant Kess returned with results that made Captain Thorak's head hurt. The database contained 847 documented cases of humans sacrificing themselves for non-humans in just the past 50 years. The numbers seemed impossible. News of the attack spread through the galaxy faster than light itself, carried by quantum burst communications that reached every major world within hours. But it wasn't the failed peace talks or the successful assassination attempt that captured galactic attention. It was the story of how Marcus Chen had died. On the water world of Aquatica, the Marleni Council gathered in their crystal dome beneath the waves. These ancient beings lived for thousands of years and prided themselves on their wisdom. Elder Telesh read the report 3 times before speaking. "This cannot be accurate," she said, her gills fluttering with agitation. "No intelligent species willingly chooses death when survival is possible. The human must have been defective or drugged." But Counselor Wavedar, who had studied other species for centuries, disagreed. "I have been researching human history since receiving this report. They have a term called heroism that appears frequently in their records. It seems to describe exactly this type of behavior." "Impossible," Elder Tidalesh replied. "Heroism is a concept for stories, not reality. Real beings choose survival." On the desert planet of scorched earth, the Thermal Lords held emergency council in their underground cities. These beings were pure energy housed in crystalline shells, and they computed every decision through mathematical equations. The concept of illogical self-sacrifice broke their computational matrices. "Run the simulation again," commanded Primary Thermal Nexus. "There must be an error." For the 4th time, the massive computer banks analyzed Marcus Chun's final moments. For the 4th time, the result showed that he had calculated a 100% chance of death and proceeded anyway. The computers literally could not process this as a rational decision. "Perhaps," suggested secondary thermal logic, "the human brain malfunctioned under stress." But deep in their databases, they found similar cases. Hundreds of them. Humans throughout their history had made the same illogical choice. The computers began to overheat trying to understand it. The most disturbing reaction came from the hive worlds, where the collective consciousness ruled billions of individual minds as one entity. The collective prided itself on perfect efficiency and logical decision-making. When the news of Marcus Chun's death reached them, something unprecedented happened. Individual minds within the collective began to question. Worker, Unit 7,453,291 paused while building a new hive structure. For the first time in its existence, it wondered what it would feel like to choose something for itself, even if that choice meant death. The thought was so alien that it caused the worker to stop functioning for 3 full minutes. Across the hive worlds, similar disruptions occurred. The collective consciousness detected thousands of individual minds asking the same impossible question. Could I die for someone else by choice? The Hive Queen herself was forced to address the disruption. Her telepathic message reached every mind in the collective. The human behavior is an evolutionary mistake. Do not contemplate it. Return to your functions. But the questions didn't stop. For the first time in a million years, the collective consciousness was not perfectly unified. Princess Zarathil, now recovered enough to leave the medical bay, stood before a massive communication array in the station's central hub. Representatives from dozens of species filled the screen, all demanding explanations for what they had witnessed. "Your Highness," said Ambassador Clickstar of the Trading Federation, his 6 arms gesturing frantically. "Our psychologists need to understand. Did the human show any signs of mental illness? Had he been exposed to mind-altering substances? Was he perhaps compelled by some form of mind control?" asked Senator Vashti of the Republic of Worlds. "Our security services need to know if humans can be programmed to self-destruct." Princess Zarathil looked at all the confused, frightened, and fascinated faces on the screen. She thought about Marcus Chun's final moments, about the joy and peace she had felt from his dying mind. "No," she said quietly. "He wasn't sick. He wasn't controlled. He wasn't drugged. Marcus Chun chose to die for me because—" She paused, searching for words that could explain something her own people couldn't understand. "Because he thought my life was worth more than his own." The silence that followed lasted for nearly a minute. Finally, Ambassador Clickstar spoke in a whisper. "That's impossible." But Princess Zarathil shook her head. "I felt his mind. I know what he felt. It's not impossible. It's just human." As the communication ended and the various alien representatives signed off to report to their governments, Princess Zarathil realized that Marcus Chun's death had done something no treaty or negotiation had ever accomplished. It had given the galaxy a mystery that couldn't be solved, a question that demanded an answer. What did it mean to be human? Dr. Kethver had spent his entire life studying the minds of different species. As the galaxy's leading xenopsychologist, he thought he understood how intelligent beings worked. But 3 weeks after Marcus Chun's death, he sat in his laboratory staring at data that made no sense. His research station orbited the neutral world of academia, where the greatest scientists from across the galaxy came to study. The walls of his lab were covered with charts, graphs, and brain scans from hundreds of different species. Today, all of that data felt useless. "Computer, run comparative analysis again," he said, his long green fingers drumming nervously on his desk. The computer's voice was calm and emotionless. "Analysis complete. Results unchanged. Human psychological patterns remain outside established parameters for rational behavior." Dr. Kethver sighed and looked at the holographic display floating in front of him. For the past 3 weeks, he had been investigating human behavior patterns, trying to understand what happened on Nexus Prime. What he found was disturbing. The Marcus Chen incident wasn't unique. It wasn't even rare. His database now contained 2,847 documented cases of humans dying to save members of other species. These weren't just soldiers in battle or bodyguards doing their jobs. These were ordinary humans who had made split-second decisions to sacrifice themselves for complete strangers. There was Dr. Sarah Martinez, who had died holding a collapsing mine shaft open so crystalline workers could escape. There was Engineer Tom O'Brien, who had manually shut down a reactor meltdown while exposing himself to lethal radiation, saving an entire aquatic city. There was Merchant Captain Lisa Jiang, who had rammed her ship into a pirate vessel to protect a thermal lord passenger transport. Each case was the same. Humans faced with a choice between their own survival and the safety of others, choosing others. Every single time. "This cannot be correct," Dr. Kethver muttered. He had studied 17 different intelligent species over his long career. Every single one of them had some form of self-preservation instinct that overrode other considerations when death was imminent. It was basic evolutionary biology. Species that didn't prioritize their own survival went extinct. Yet here were humans, thriving across the galaxy while regularly throwing away their lives for others. His assistant, a young Zentorian named Plex, entered the laboratory carrying another stack of data chips. "Doctor, the human military records you requested have arrived from Earth's archives." Dr. Kethver inserted the chips into his computer and began reading. What he found made his head spin. Human military history was full of medals given for exactly the kind of behavior that other species considered insane. They had awards specifically for dying to save others. The Victoria Cross, the Medal of Honor, the Order of the Golden Star. Plex, he called to his assistant. Look at this. Humans have been doing this for thousands of years. They have entire cultural institutions built around glorifying self-sacrifice. Plex studied the data with his large analytical eyes. Doctor, perhaps humans have a genetic defect that prevents proper self-preservation responses. That's what I thought at first, Dr. Kethver replied. But look at their survival rates in dangerous situations. Humans actually survive hostile environments better than most species because they're so good at protecting each other. Their willingness to die for others somehow makes them stronger as a group. Meanwhile, on the crystal ships of the Eternal Fleet, ancient beings who had lived for millions of years were having their own crisis of understanding. The Crystalline Eternal were perhaps the oldest intelligent species in the galaxy. They had seen civilizations rise and fall, stars be born and die. They thought they had seen everything. Counselor Prismatic Rainbow, who was old when the galaxy was young, studied the human data with growing confusion. Her crystal body pulsed with different colors as she processed the information. In all my ages, she said to her council, I have never seen a species that routinely chooses to lose millions of years of potential experience for the sake of other beings. When I choose to act, I calculate the potential knowledge and experiences I might gain over the next 1,000 years. The concept of willingly ending all that for a stranger is incomprehensible. Her fellow counselor, Spectrum Infinite, shared her confusion. Perhaps humans live such short lives that death seems unimportant to them? But their research showed this wasn't true. Humans valued their short lives intensely. They fought hard to extend them, treasured every moment, created art and poetry about how precious life was. Yet they would give it up instantly for others. The mystery deepened when Princess Zarathil arrived at Dr. Kethver's research station. She had been traveling the galaxy for weeks, visiting universities and research centers, trying to understand what she had witnessed. Her royal status opened doors that would normally be closed to researchers. Dr. Kethvar, she said as she entered his laboratory, I need to understand what my bodyguard was. What humans are. The doctor gestured to his displays filled with human data. Your Highness, I have been studying this question since the incident. What I have found challenges everything we thought we knew about intelligent behavior. He showed her case after case of human self-sacrifice. Videos of humans running into burning buildings to save strangers. Records of humans donating organs to people they had never met. Stories of humans adopting children from other species and raising them as their own. They call it love, Dr. Kethver explained. But their definition of love extends far beyond what any other species considers rational. They love people they've never met. They love concepts like justice and freedom. They love their entire species, their planet, sometimes even the galaxy itself. Princess Zarathil watched a video of a human woman giving her life to save a group of thermal, lured children from a collapsing building. The woman didn't hesitate, didn't calculate odds, didn't consider alternatives. She just acted. In my species, the princess said quietly, we feel emotions deeply. We can share them with others through touch. But what I felt from Marcus Chun goes beyond emotion. It was a choice that came from something deeper than feeling. Dr. Kethver nodded. I have been calling it the human paradox. They are simultaneously the most survival-oriented species we know, and the most willing to abandon survival for others. They fight harder to stay alive than anyone, but they'll give up that life instantly for the right cause. News of the research began to spread through academic communities across the galaxy. Other scientists confirmed Dr. Kethver's findings. The Hive Mind Collective ran their own analysis and found that human self-sacrifice behavior violated every model they had for collective survival. The mathematical union of pure logic tried to create equations to explain human behavior and found that their computers couldn't process it. The Psychic Research Institute attempted to study human minds directly and discovered something even more disturbing. When humans made decisions to sacrifice themselves, their brains lit up in the same areas that activated during moments of extreme happiness. Dying for others literally made them feel good. It's as if, reported Dr. Mindredder of the Psychic Institute, they've evolved to find joy in giving their lives away. This should have eliminated them from existence eons ago, yet somehow it makes them stronger. Princess Zarathil spent days reading research reports and watching videos of human behavior. She saw humans donating money to help disaster victims on planets they had never visited. She watched humans voluntarily go into dangerous worlds to provide medical aid to species that couldn't even pronounce their names. She read about humans who had given up promising careers to teach alien children. Humans who had spent their entire lives working to protect environments they would never see. "Doctor," she said finally, "I think I'm beginning to understand something that terrifies me." "What's that, Your Highness?" Marcus Chun wasn't unusual for a human. He wasn't a hero or a saint or someone special. She paused, looking at the overwhelming evidence surrounding them. He was normal. This is just what humans do. They care about others more than they care about themselves, and they think that's perfectly reasonable. Dr. Keth felt a chill run through his body. "If that's true, Your Highness, then we have been completely wrong about humans since first contact. They're not just another species. There's something else entirely." Outside the research station, unknown to the scientists inside, representatives from military fleets across the galaxy were receiving the same data. Some were impressed. Some were terrified. Some began to wonder if humans could be controlled, predicted, or defeated using conventional methods. The human paradox was about to become the galaxy's most important and dangerous secret. General Krekstar slammed his 4 fists on the war table with enough force to crack the metal surface. The Vortic War Council chamber fell silent as the massive warrior's red eyes blazed with frustration. "You're telling me," he growled, "that we can't predict what humans will do because they don't follow basic survival logic?" Commander Thekval, his intelligence chief, shifted nervously. "Sir, our psychological warfare experts have studied the new data. Human behavior patterns don't match any known models. They could sacrifice themselves at any moment for any reason. Traditional threat assessment becomes impossible." The War Council chamber was filled with Vorthic's greatest military minds. These beings had conquered 17 star systems through careful planning and superior tactics. They knew how to predict enemy behavior, exploit weaknesses, and apply pressure at the right points. But humans were breaking all their rules. "Show me the analysis again," General Krekstar demanded. The holographic display activated, showing human military actions throughout their history. The battle after battle where humans had done the impossible, not through superior technology or numbers, but by choosing to die when any sensible being would retreat. "Look at this." Commander Thekval pointed to a specific battle. Human soldiers surrounded by enemy forces, outnumbered 10 to 1. Any rational species would surrender or flee. Instead, they fought to the last person, allowing their fleet to escape. "We can't plan for enemies who see certain death as an acceptable option." General Krekstar stared at the data. The implications were terrifying. How do you threaten beings who aren't afraid to die? How do you negotiate with people who might sacrifice themselves to prove a point? How do you control a species that values abstract concepts more than their own lives? "Send word to the High Command," he said finally. "Humans are to be classified as a Class X threat. unpredictable, and potentially uncontainable. Similar conversations were happening throughout the galaxy. The hegemonic order, a collection of militaristic species, held emergency sessions on 17 different worlds. The Shadow Fleet, pirates and raiders who ruled through fear, found themselves confused by reports of humans who couldn't be intimidated. But not everyone was afraid. On the research world of new discovery, the greatest scientific minds in the galaxy were having the time of their lives. The Akashic Archives, the galaxy's premier research institution, had just announced the creation of the first Human Studies Department in galactic history. Dr. Spiral Mind, the institute's director, was practically vibrating with excitement. In 3,000 years of operation, he announced to the packed auditorium, "We have never encountered a species that fundamentally changes our understanding of intelligence itself. Humans represent the greatest scientific discovery of our age." The audience, filled with beings from dozens of different species, listened with rapt attention. Human psychology was becoming the most studied subject in the galaxy. "We are launching immediate expeditions to Earth and all human colonies," Dr. Spiral Mind continued. "We need to understand not just what humans do, but why they think it's normal. Princess Zarathil of the Etherian Empire has graciously agreed to fund these expeditions." In the audience, Princess Zarathil nodded gracefully. Since Marcus Chen's death, she had become obsessed with understanding his species. She had read every human book translated into galactic languages, watched every human film in the archives, studied every aspect of human culture she could find. What she discovered amazed her. Humans didn't just sacrifice themselves for others. They built entire societies around the concept. They told stories to their children about heroes who gave their lives for strangers. They created holidays to remember people who died protecting others. They taught their young that the highest goal in life was to serve something greater than yourself. It's not just individual behavior, she had explained to the Research Council. It's cultural. They've created a civilization that encourages and rewards self-sacrifice. No wonder they produce people like Marcus Chun. The research expeditions to human space were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Teams of scientists from every major species traveled to Earth, New Terra, Harmony Station, and a dozen other human worlds. What they found challenged everything they thought they knew about civilization. Dr. Antenna Witcher of the Insect Collective studied human emergency services. He watched human firefighters run into burning buildings to save strangers. Human medics risk their lives in disaster zones. Human police officers throw themselves between criminals and innocent people. They have professionalized self-sacrifice, he reported back to his hive. They actually train people to risk their lives for others, and society rewards them for it. It's completely insane, and somehow it works. The crystalline research team was fascinated by human art and literature. Ancient Earth poems spoke of love stronger than death. Human songs celebrated people who died for their friends, their families, their beliefs. Human movies portrayed self-sacrifice as the ultimate good. They don't just accept this behavior, reported Crystal Schaller. They worship it. They tell stories about it. They make it beautiful. No wonder they produce so many people willing to die for others. Meanwhile, on the spiritual world of Luminar, something unprecedented was happening. The Luminar Ascendancy were beings of pure energy who had spent millions of years seeking spiritual enlightenment. They believed in transcending physical existence to reach higher planes of consciousness. When news of Marcus Chun's sacrifice reached them, their entire worldview shifted. High Luminar Sacred Glide called an emergency gathering of all spiritual leaders. "Fellow seekers," he announced, "we have been wrong about the path to enlightenment. We have spent eons trying to transcend physical concerns, to rise above caring about others. But these humans have achieved something greater." The assembly glowed brighter as thousands of energy beings focused their attention on his words. They have learned to care so much about others that they willingly give up existence itself. This is not primitive emotion. This is the highest form of consciousness. They have evolved beyond selfishness completely. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Luminar pilgrims began traveling to human worlds, seeking to learn from them. Temples were built to honor Marcus Chun and other humans who had made the ultimate sacrifice. Prayer ceremonies were conducted in human languages that the Luminar couldn't even pronounce properly. The worship spread to other species. The Zen collective declared humans to be the chosen guardians of the galaxy. The spirit walkers proclaimed that humans carried divine sparks that other species had lost. Cults devoted to human heroes sprouted on hundreds of worlds. Marcus Chun's name became known throughout the galaxy. Statues of him were erected on worlds he had never visited. Songs were composed about his sacrifice in musical frequencies that human ears couldn't even detect. His final words, "Remember us fondly," were translated into over 3,000 galactic languages and carved into monuments across known space. But fame came with a price: intelligence. Reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. The Iron Fist Coalition was developing new weapons specifically designed to counter human unpredictability. The Shadow Syndicate was researching ways to capture and control human psychology. The Merchant Guild was calculating how to profit from human self-sacrifice by using them as disposable soldiers. Princess Zarathil received these reports in her private quarters aboard the research vessel Eternal Quest. She had spent months traveling the galaxy, studying the growing reactions to the revelation about human nature. What she saw both inspired and terrified her. "They don't understand," she said to her aide, a young Etherean named Veltarin. "These other species look at humans and see either useful tools or dangerous threats. They miss the point completely." "What is the point, Your Highness?" Veltarin asked. Princess Zarathil looked out at the stars, remembering Marcus Chen's final moments. "The point is that Marcus didn't die for me because he was programmed to, or because he was afraid not to, or because he thought he would gain something from it. He died for me because he chose love over fear. And that choice is available to every being in the galaxy." She paused, watching ships from different species traveling the space lanes. Some were traders, some were explorers, some were probably spies gathering intelligence on human colonies. "But they're all asking the wrong question," she continued. "They want to know how to use humans or control them or defend against them. The question they should be asking is, could we learn to be like them?" Valkarin considered this. "Your Highness, do you really think other species could learn to sacrifice themselves for strangers?" Princess Zarathil smiled, but it was a sad smile. "I don't know if they can learn it, Veltarin, but I know some of them are starting to try. And that might change everything." Unknown to the princess, her words were more prophetic than she realized. In scattered corners of the galaxy, individual members of various species were beginning to ask themselves the same impossible question: could I be that brave? The galaxy was about to find out. 6 months after Marcus Chen's death, Princess Zarathil stood before the largest gathering in galactic history. The Grand Assembly Chamber on Capital Prime could hold representatives from every known species, and today it was completely full. Beings who had never been in the same room together sat side by side, all waiting to hear what the Etherean princess had to say. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy. Translators worked overtime to handle hundreds of different languages. Security forces from dozens of species maintained uneasy peace as traditional enemies sat within arm's reach of each other. Princess Zarathil walked to the central podium, her blue skin seeming to glow under the chamber's lights. In the 6 months since Marcus's sacrifice, she had changed. The young princess, who had once focused on simple trade, Negotiations was now someone who spoke with authority about the very nature of consciousness and civilization. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. "6 months ago, a human named Marcus Chun died to save my life. Today, I stand before you to announce that his death has taught me something that will change the course of galactic history." Murmurs rippled through the assembled representatives. Some shifted nervously, others leaned forward with interest. "For too long," Princess Zarathil continued, "our civilizations have been built on the principle of rational self-interest. We trade because it benefits us. We form alliances because they make us stronger. We avoid war because we might lose. Every relationship between our species is based on calculating what we gain and what we risk." General Krekstar of the Vorthic delegation growled low in his throat. He didn't like where this speech was heading. "But Marcus Chun showed me a different way," the princess said. "He showed me what happens when a being cares more about others than about themselves. He showed me love without calculation, sacrifice without expectation of reward. Courage that comes from the heart rather than from strategy." She paused, looking around the chamber at the hundreds of alien faces watching her. "Today, I announce that the Etherian Empire is withdrawing from the Galactic Council." The chamber exploded. Representatives jumped to their feet, shouting in dozens of languages. Security forces moved to maintain order as accusations and demands filled the air. Princess Zarathil waited calmly for the chaos to subside. "We are withdrawing," she continued once the noise died down, "to form something new. The Covenant of Guardians, an alliance based not on mutual benefit, but on mutual care. Not on what we can gain, but on what we can give." Ambassador Klickstar of the Trading Federation waved his 6 arms frantically. "Your Highness, this is madness. Galactic civilization is built on rational cooperation. You can't base an interstellar alliance on emotions." Princess Zarathil smiled. "Watch us." She gestured to the diplomatic section, where representatives from several species stood up. "The Human Federation has agreed to join the Covenant of Guardians. So have the Aquatic Nations, the Peaceful Collective, and the Harmony Worlds. We will be the first interstellar alliance in galactic history, based on the principle that the welfare of others is more important than our own advancement." The reaction was immediate and divided. Some species applauded, others shouted protests, and still others sat in stunned silence. The galaxy was splitting before their eyes. "This is what Marcus Chun died for," Princess Zarathil said, her voice rising above the chaos. "Not for a trade agreement or a peace treaty, but for the idea that love is stronger than fear, that caring for others is more important than protecting ourselves, that there is something in the universe worth dying for." Over the following weeks, the galaxy chose sides. The Covenant of Guardians grew as species inspired by human sacrifice joined the alliance. The traditional powers formed the Rational Alliance, dedicated to preserving logical self-interest as the basis of civilization. But something else was happening, something that neither alliance had planned for. On a mining station in the Outer Rim, a crystalline worker named Fragment of Starlight faced a choice that would have been simple just months ago. A human child had fallen into a processing chamber, and the only way to save her was to manually shut down the crushing mechanisms from inside the chamber itself. The worker would be destroyed in the process. 6 months ago, Fragment of Starlight would have calculated the loss. Millions of years of potential experience, traded for one short human life. The mathematics were clear, but as he looked at the terrified child, he remembered the stories of Marcus Chun, the videos of human sacrifice, the research showing that humans found joy in giving their lives for others. Perhaps, he thought, there is more to existence than just existing. Fragment of Starlight entered the chamber and saved the child, on the water world of Deep Blue. A Marlane merchant named Current Rider faced pirates demanding his cargo. The cargo was medical supplies intended for a human colony suffering from plague. The logical choice was to surrender the supplies and live. Instead, current writer thought about what he had learned about human courage and chose to fight. He died defending the supplies. But his sacrifice allowed them to reach the colony in time to save thousands of lives. On Hive World Prime, something unprecedented happened. Worker Unit 7,453,291, the same unit that had first questioned the collective after hearing about Marcus Chun, broke away from the hive mind entirely. It chose individuality, chose the possibility of making its own decisions about sacrifice and love, even though it meant isolation from everything it had ever known. Within days, thousands of other workers followed. For the first time in a million years, the collective consciousness was no longer perfectly unified. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. A thermal lord choosing to share his accumulated knowledge freely instead of selling it. A Zentarian giving up a promotion to care for alien refugees. A Shadow Fleet pirate refusing to attack a medical transport carrying human doctors to a disaster zone. Dr. Kethver, still studying human psychology, found himself documenting an entirely new phenomenon. It appears, he wrote in his latest research paper, that exposure to human sacrifice behavior is causing other species to develop similar patterns. The human paradox may be contagious. Meanwhile, on Nexus Prime, where Marcus Chen had died, construction was completed on a monument unlike any other in the galaxy. The memorial to unknown guardians honored not just Marcus, but every being throughout galactic history who had chosen to die for others. The monument was simple, a crystal spire reaching toward the stars, with a single inscription in every known language. Greater love has no being than this, that someone lay down their life for another. Princess Zarathil attended the dedication ceremony, standing exactly where Marcus Chun had died. Representatives from dozens of species were present, including some who had initially opposed the Covenant of Guardians but had since joined. "Marcus," she whispered, looking up at the monument. "Look what you started." As if in response to her words, a young Vorthek warrior approached the memorial. General Krekstar's own son had traveled here in secret, against his father's orders. The young warrior knelt before the monument and spoke in heavily accented Standard Galactic. "I do not understand how you did what you did," he said, addressing the memory of Marcus Chun. "But I want to learn. I want to be brave like you." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Beings who had never considered the possibility of self-sacrifice were learning to put others first. It wasn't easy. Evolution had programmed them for survival just as it had every other species. But they were learning that there was something more important than survival. A year after Marcus Chun's death, Princess Zarathil received a report that brought tears to her eyes. Dr. Antenna Twitcher of the Insect Collective, the same scientist who had studied human emergency services, had died saving a group of alien children from a collapsing building on his homeworld. His final words, transmitted by his communication device as the building fell, were, "Tell them a bug learned to be human." The galaxy was changing. It would never be the same logical, calculating place it had been before. Some species resisted the change, clinging to old ways of thinking about survival and self-interest. But others embraced it, learning that caring for others could bring a joy that no amount of personal success could match. Princess Zarathil stood in her new office aboard Harmony Station, the capital of the Covenant of Guardians. Through her window, she could see ships from dozens of species working together on a massive project, a hospital ship that would provide free medical care to any being in need. Anywhere in the galaxy. It was exactly the kind of illogical, unprofitable, dangerous mission that Marcus Chun would have loved. "Your Highness," her aide Veltaran entered with the daily reports. The hospital ship Unity is ready for its first mission. They're requesting permission to enter Rational Alliance space to help with the plague outbreak on Mining World 7. Granted, Princess Zarathil said without hesitation. And Veltaran? Yes, Your Highness. Make sure they know that if anyone tries to stop them from helping people who need medical care, we'll consider it an act of war. Some things are worth fighting for. Veltaran smiled. Over the past year, he had watched his princess transform from a diplomat focused on peaceful compromise to a leader willing to fight for what was right.